Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is staring at a blank screen. Their fingers are hovering over the keyboard. They know exactly what they need to do. The task might take 15 minutes, maybe 20. It is not complicated. It is not confusing. They have done similar things before, and yet something inside them refuses to start. Not tomorrow, not in an hour. Right now, in this very second, they are frozen. And here is the part that will mess with your head. That person might be you. You have felt it before. That strange, invisible wall that appears between you and the thing you are supposed to do. It does not matter how small the task is. It does not matter how capable you are. Something locks up inside your chest, and before you even realize what happened, 3 days have passed, and that tiny little task is still sitting there, untouched, growing heavier with every hour you ignore it. Most people look at this and say one word: lazy. You must be lazy. You must not care enough. You must not have enough discipline. But here is what nobody tells you. That is not what is happening, not even close. What is actually happening inside your brain is far more interesting, far more sneaky, and far more fixable than simple laziness. And once you understand it, you will never look at procrastination the same way again. But before we get there, let me ask you something that might sting a little. How many ideas have you buried? How many projects did you dream about starting but never touched? How many goals did you set on a Sunday night, full of energy and excitement, only to abandon them by Wednesday? If that number is higher than you would like to admit, stay with me, because what you are about to learn is not another productivity hack. It is not another morning routine. It is a way of rewiring the one thing that controls everything you do, your mind. And the first secret starts with something that sounds absolutely ridiculous. Do the work badly on purpose. Yeah, I know, that sounds insane. Why would anyone deliberately try to do a bad job? We have been told our entire lives that excellence matters, that quality counts, that you should always put your best foot forward. And those things are true, eventually. But right now, that obsession with doing things perfectly is the exact reason you are not doing anything at all. Let me break this down for you because it is one of the most misunderstood traps in the human mind. Your brain is not afraid of work. Read that again. Your brain is not afraid of the task itself. What your brain is terrified of is the pressure to do that task flawlessly. The moment your mind senses that something needs to be perfect, a tiny alarm goes off deep inside your nervous system. It is not a loud alarm. It is not dramatic. It is a quiet whisper that says, "What if you fail? What if it is not good enough? What if people judge you?" And that whisper, as soft as it is, has enough power to shut you down completely. Think about it like this. Imagine someone hands you a pencil and a blank piece of paper and says, "Draw something." No rules, no expectations. Just put pencil to paper and see what comes out. Most people could do that without thinking twice. It might not be a masterpiece, but they would start. Now imagine someone hands you that same pencil and that same paper, but this time they say, "Draw the best thing you have ever drawn." This is going to be displayed in front of your entire office. Everyone will see it. Everyone will judge it. Feel that? That tightening in your stomach? That sudden urge to put the pencil down and say, "You will do it later"? That is the perfection trap. The task did not change. Drawing is still drawing. The pencil is the same pencil. The paper is the same paper. But the pressure changed everything. And your brain, in its desperate attempt to protect you from potential failure, does the one thing that guarantees actual failure. It stops you from starting. This happens everywhere. A guy in Chicago wants to launch a small online business. He has the idea. He has the skills. He has a laptop and an internet connection. Everything he needs is right in front of him. But he keeps telling himself that the website has to be perfect before he launches. The logo needs to be flawless. The copy needs to be brilliant. The product photos need to look like they were shot by a professional in Manhattan. So what happens? Months go by. The website never launches. The business stays a fantasy trapped inside his head. A woman in London wants to start a YouTube channel. She is smart, articulate, and has something genuinely valuable to say. But she keeps thinking that her first video needs to blow people away. It needs to go viral. It needs to look cinematic and sound professional and make people immediately subscribe. So she keeps researching cameras. She keeps watching tutorials about lighting. She keeps rewriting her script for the 15th time. And the channel stays empty. 0 videos, 0 subscribers, 0 impact. A college student in Boston sits down to write a research paper. He opens his laptop, stares at the blank document, and thinks, "This paper needs to be the best one I have ever written. My professor is tough. My classmates are smart. I need every paragraph to be airtight." So he closes the laptop, picks up his phone, scrolls through social media for an hour, and tells himself he will start tomorrow when he feels more inspired. Do you see the pattern? The task is not the enemy. The standard is the enemy. The impossible bar you set before you even begin is the thing that is killing your progress. And the cruelest part is that it disguises itself as ambition. You think you are being driven. You think you have high standards. But in reality, those high standards are a wall, not a ladder. They are not pushing you up. They are keeping you out. This is where the intentionally bad rule changes everything. And I mean everything. Here is how it works. Instead of telling yourself that you need to do an amazing job, you tell yourself the exact opposite. You say, "I am going to do this badly. I am going to write the worst paragraph I have ever written. I am going to make the ugliest sketch. I am going to record the most awkward, clumsy, embarrassing first video. And I am going to do it right now." It sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like you are setting yourself up for failure. But here is the secret that hides inside this strange little trick. When you remove the pressure to be great, your brain relaxes. Instantly, that quiet alarm that was screaming danger, it goes silent. Because now there is no threat. There is no audience to impress. There is no competition to win. There is no standard to meet. There is just you doing a small, imperfect thing. And your brain loves that. It absolutely loves that. Think about how kids learn to ride a bike. Have you ever watched a 5-year-old on a bicycle for the first time? They are wobbling all over the place. They crash into bushes. They fall on the grass and scrape their knees. They look ridiculous. And they do not care, not even a little bit. They are laughing while they fall. They get up and try again without a single thought about how bad they look. And because they are not afraid of being terrible, they learn fast, incredibly fast. Now think about how adults approach new things. We research for weeks before starting. We compare ourselves to experts who have been doing it for years. We set impossible expectations for our very first attempt. And then, When the reality does not match the fantasy, we quit. Or worse, we never start at all. Here is the thing that most people miss. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, we made a terrible trade. We traded the willingness to be bad for the obsession with looking good. We stopped caring about learning and started caring about appearing. We stopped prioritizing effort and started prioritizing image. And that trade cost us more than we will ever know. The intentionally bad rule reverses that trade. It gives you permission to be a beginner again. It gives you permission to stumble, to struggle, to produce something messy and imperfect and rough around the edges. And here is the beautiful part. Once you actually start, something magical happens. Your brain switches modes. Before you started, it was in evaluation mode, judging, analyzing, predicting failure. But the moment you begin doing the work, even badly, your brain shifts into execution mode. It starts problem solving, it starts adjusting, it starts finding small improvements. It cannot help itself. That is how human minds work. We are wired to optimize whatever we are actively doing, but we cannot optimize something we have not started. There is this idea that motivation comes first and action comes second, that you need to feel ready, feel inspired, feel pumped up before you can do anything meaningful. And it sounds logical. It really does. But in the real world, it almost always works the other way around. Action comes first. Motivation follows. You do not wait until you feel like running to start running. You put on your shoes, you step outside, and after 5 minutes, your body warms up and suddenly you want to keep going. The same thing happens with any kind of work. You sit down and write one terrible sentence, then another, and somewhere around the 5th or 6th sentence, something clicks. The words start flowing. The ideas start connecting. The resistance fades, not because anything changed externally, but because your brain got out of its own way. Think of it like a train sitting at the station. Getting that train to move from a dead stop requires enormous energy. The engine roars. The wheels grind. Everything resists. But once the train starts rolling, momentum takes over. Each second of movement makes the next second easier. Each rotation of the wheels builds on the one before. The hardest part was never the journey. The hardest part was always the first push. You are that train, and the intentionally bad rule is the first push. Let me give you some real examples of how this plays out in everyday life. Say you need to study for a certification exam. The material is thick. The chapters are long. The whole thing feels overwhelming. Instead of telling yourself you need to study for 3 hours straight, try this. Tell yourself, I am going to read 1 page, just 1, and I am probably not even going to understand it. That is fine. 1 page, badly read, and I am done. What happens next is almost predictable. You read that 1 page. It was not that bad. So you read another, then another. Then you look up and realize 40 minutes have passed, and you have actually covered a decent amount of material, not because you forced yourself, but because once the engine started, momentum did the rest. Or say you want to start working out, but the idea of a full gym session feels like climbing a mountain. Do not commit to an hour. Do not plan a perfect routine. Just tell yourself, 5 jumping jacks. That is it. The most pathetic workout in history. 5 jumping jacks, and I am done. But once your blood starts moving and your heart rate picks up, your body will want more. It almost always does. Because your body, like your brain, responds to motion. It just needs that first push. Or maybe you've been meaning to clean your apartment, but the mess has gotten so bad that you do not even know where to start. Do not try to clean the whole place. Just pick up one sock. One single sock off the floor. The most laughable cleaning effort anyone has ever made. But once that sock is in the hamper, you will probably grab the shirt next to it, then the shoes by the door, then the dishes in the sink. Because action breeds action. Always. Here is what I really want you to understand. The difference between people who consistently get things done and people who constantly put things off is not talent. It is not intelligence. It is not willpower. It is not some magical gene that one group has and the other does not. The difference is almost embarrassingly simple. One group starts. The other group waits. One group gives themselves permission to be imperfect. The other group waits for the perfect moment, the perfect mood, the perfect plan. And here is the brutal truth about perfect moments. They do not exist. They never have. The perfect mood is a myth. The perfect plan is a fantasy. The stars will never align the way you want them to. There will always be a reason to wait. There will always be an excuse to delay. And if you keep listening to those excuses, you will find yourself 5 years from now in the exact same spot, wondering where the time went. But a bad start? A messy, awkward, imperfect, embarrassing start? That is always available. That is always within reach. And that terrible first attempt, the one you are so afraid of, is worth more than 1,000 perfect plans that never left your head. Because here is what nobody tells you about the creative process, about building things, about doing meaningful work. Almost nothing great was great in its first version. The first draft of every best-selling novel was rough. The first recording of every hit song was raw. The first prototype of every groundbreaking product was clunky and ugly and barely functional. But those rough, raw, ugly beginnings led somewhere. They led to second drafts and third attempts and gradual improvements that eventually became something extraordinary, but only because someone had the courage to start badly. Think about a farmer standing at the edge of an empty field in the middle of March. The soil is cold, the sky is gray. Nothing about this moment screams success. If that farmer waited until conditions were absolutely perfect, perfect temperature, perfect soil moisture, perfect sunshine, the planting season would pass. The field would stay empty. The harvest would never come. But a smart farmer does not wait for perfect. A smart farmer plants the seeds, then waters them, then watches, then adjusts, then waits some more, and eventually something grows. Your goals work the same way. Plant the seed. It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be pretty. It just has to be in the ground. Because nothing grows from an empty field, and nothing changes from an unlived plan. When you give yourself permission to be bad, you're actually giving yourself permission to learn. When you give yourself permission to make mistakes, you're giving yourself permission to grow. The people who spend their lives chasing perfection before they begin are the same people who stay exactly where they are year after year, wondering why nothing ever changes. The people who start, messy, scared, unprepared, imperfect, are the ones who slowly, quietly, stubbornly get better. So the next time you are staring at a task that feels like a mountain, do not pressure yourself to conquer the whole thing. Do not tell yourself that you need to produce something incredible, just tell yourself this: I am going to do this terribly. I am going to make a mess of it, and I am going to start right now. Because a bad start is always better than no start. The person who begins badly has something to fix, something to improve, something to build on. The person who never begins has nothing, absolutely nothing. And remember this: the people who win are not always the smartest. They are not always the most talented. They are not always the most prepared. More often than not, they are simply the ones who stopped overthinking and took the first step. That step might have been small. It might have been clumsy. It might have been the worst first step in the history of first steps. But it was a step. And that step led to another one, and another, and another. And that is how everything begins. There was a time, not that long ago, when boredom was just a normal part of life. If you were waiting for the bus, you waited. You stood there, looked around, maybe watched the clouds move across the sky. If the power went out on a summer evening, you sat on the porch and listened to the crickets. If you were stuck in a doctor's waiting room, you flipped through an old magazine you had zero interest in. Or you just sat there with your thoughts, doing absolutely nothing. And nobody panicked about it. Nobody felt like something was wrong. Boredom was just the background noise of being alive. But something shifted, quietly at first, then all at once. And if you are honest with yourself, you already know what it is: your phone. Think about the last time you had even 2 minutes of empty space. 2 minutes with nothing to do, nowhere to look, no task demanding your attention. What did you do? You reached for your phone. You did not even think about it. Your hand just moved, like a reflex, like scratching an itch you did not even know you had. And within seconds, you were somewhere else. A short video, then another one, a notification, a quick scroll through a feed, a reel, a story, a comment section. And before you even realized what happened, 20 minutes had vanished, maybe 30, maybe an hour. And here is the thing that nobody warns you about. Every time that happens, your brain is learning something. It is learning that empty space is uncomfortable. It is learning that stillness is something to escape from. It is learning that every single moment of your day should be filled with something bright, something fast, something new, something stimulating. And over time, that lesson becomes an addiction. Not a dramatic, obvious addiction, a quiet one. The kind you do not even notice until you try to sit still and realize you cannot. This is why the work you know you should be doing feels so impossibly hard. It is not because the work itself is difficult. It is because your brain has been trained to expect a constant stream of easy pleasure. And anything that does not deliver that instant hit feels boring, heavy, and pointless by comparison. Think about it this way. Imagine you have 2 plates in front of you. One plate has a thick slice of your favorite chocolate cake, rich, sweet, covered in frosting. The other plate has a plain piece of whole wheat bread. No butter, no jam, just bread. Which one are you reaching for? Obviously the cake, every single time. But now imagine something different. Imagine you have not eaten anything all day. Nothing for breakfast. Nothing for lunch. It is now 7 in the evening and your stomach is growling. Someone puts that same plain piece of bread in front of you. No cake this time, just the bread. How does it taste now? Incredible. Like the best bread you have ever had. You eat every crumb and you are genuinely grateful for it. The bread did not change. You changed. Your context changed. Your baseline changed. And that shift in baseline is everything. This is exactly what is happening inside your head every single day. When your brain is constantly flooded with high stimulation content, fast-cut videos, endless feeds, rapid-fire notifications, colorful apps designed by teams of engineers whose entire job is to keep you scrolling, then normal work feels like that plain bread sitting next to chocolate cake. It does not stand a chance. Your brain looks at the assignment, the project, the chapter you need to study, and it says, "Why would I do this when I could be watching something fun right now?" And it is not being lazy. It is being rational, based on the world you have trained it to expect. This is where boredom therapy comes in, and I know the name sounds strange. Therapy usually involves doing something. This involves doing nothing, deliberately, intentionally, almost aggressively, doing nothing. And it might be one of the most powerful things you ever do for your focus, your productivity, and your mental clarity. Here is the concept. You take a period of time. It does not have to be long. Even 20 minutes will work. And you remove every source of easy stimulation. No phone, no laptop, no television, no music, no podcasts, no books, no conversations, nothing. Just you, sitting in a room, alone with your own thoughts. That is it. That is the whole technique. Sit there. Be bored. Now, if you have never tried this, let me tell you exactly what is going to happen, because it follows a very predictable pattern. The first 2 minutes will feel fine, maybe even relaxing. Oh, this is nice. A little break, no big deal. By minute 5, you will start getting restless. Your leg will bounce. Your eyes will scan the room. Your hand will instinctively reach for your pocket where your phone usually lives. You will feel a pull, almost physical, toward something, anything, that can fill the silence. By minute 10, your brain will start negotiating. Just a quick check, just one message, just 30 seconds. It will come up with perfectly logical reasons why you need your phone right now. Someone might have texted. Something important might have happened. You should really check, just in case. By minute 15, something strange will begin to happen. The restlessness will start to fade. Not completely, but enough to notice. Your thoughts will slow down. The urgent need for stimulation will ease up just a little. And in that small gap, in that thin sliver of mental quiet, something will shift. You will start thinking about real things, not random things. Not the viral video you saw yesterday. Not the comment someone left on a post. Real things. That project you have been putting off. The conversation you have been avoiding. The goal you set 3 months ago and forgot about. The idea that has been sitting in the back of your mind, waiting for enough silence to be heard. This is what boredom does. It does not shut your brain down. It clears the runway. It removes all the noise and clutter and flashing distractions so that the important stuff, the stuff that actually matters, can finally rise to the surface. Think about a snow globe. When you shake it, everything is chaos. Glitter flying everywhere, impossible to see through. But if you set it down and wait, all that glitter slowly settles to the bottom. And suddenly, the picture inside becomes clear. Your mind works the same way. The constant stimulation is the shaking. Boredom is the moment you set it down and let things settle. And here is what makes this so powerful in practical terms. Remember that chapter you have been avoiding? The one that felt impossibly boring? After 20 minutes of genuine, uninterrupted boredom, that chapter does not feel the same. It actually looks kind of interesting, not because the chapter changed, but because your brain's comparison point changed. Before, the chapter was competing against TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Netflix, and 1,000 other sources of instant dopamine. It never stood a chance. But now, after sitting in total silence with absolutely nothing to do, the chapter is competing against a blank wall. And trust me, your brain will pick the chapter over a blank wall every single time. This is the same reason why so many great ideas come to people in the shower, or during a long walk, or while staring out a train window on a slow Sunday afternoon. Those are moments when the brain is not being bombarded with information. There is no feed to scroll, no video to watch, no notification to check, just quiet. And in that quiet, the brain does what it does best. It thinks, it connects, it creates, it solves problems it has been chewing on in the background for days. You know what the biggest problem in most people's lives is right now? It is not a lack of information. We have more information available to us than any generation in human history. You can learn anything, anytime, from anywhere. The problem is not information. The problem is silence. The problem is that we have almost completely eliminated the empty spaces from our day. Every gap is filled. Every pause is plugged. Every moment of potential boredom is immediately neutralized by a screen. And that might seem harmless. What is wrong with a little entertainment? What is wrong with checking your phone while you wait in line? On the surface, nothing. But underneath, something significant is happening. Your brain is losing its ability to tolerate low stimulation activities. It is losing its ability to focus on things that are important but not exciting. It is losing its ability to sit with a difficult problem long enough to actually solve it. Because the moment something feels hard or slow or uncomfortable, it knows there is an easier option, one pocket reach away. Let me give you a concrete example. A guy named Marcus, late 20s, lives in Denver, works in marketing, smart guy, creative guy. But every time he sat down to work on a presentation, he could not last more than 10 minutes before grabbing his phone. He would check messages, flip through a few posts, watch a quick clip, then try to get back to work. But by then, his focus was shattered. The presentation that should have taken 2 hours took an entire day, and the quality was mediocre because his attention was never fully there. One day, Marcus tried something different. Before sitting down to work, he put his phone in a drawer in another room. Then he sat at his desk with nothing but his laptop, browser tabs closed, notifications off, nothing on the screen except the blank presentation. For the first few minutes, it was painful. He kept looking at the spot where his phone usually sat. His fingers twitched. His mind raced. But he stayed. He sat with the discomfort. And after about 15 minutes, something shifted. The presentation started to feel less daunting. The ideas started to come. His focus sharpened. And he finished the entire thing in 90 minutes. Better quality work than he had produced in months. What happened? Was Marcus suddenly smarter? Did he suddenly develop superhuman discipline? No. He just removed the competition. He took away the easy dopamine and left his brain with only 2 choices: work on the presentation or stare at a wall. And his brain like every human brain, chose the more engaging option. When the competition was fair, the work won. This is the principle. Your brain is always making comparisons. Always. It is always weighing the current activity against the alternatives. If the alternatives are more exciting, the current activity loses. But if you eliminate the exciting alternatives, even temporarily, the current activity becomes the most interesting thing available. And your brain will engage with it, not because you forced it, but because you set up the environment so that engagement was the natural outcome. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This sounds uncomfortable. Sitting in silence with nothing to do, that sounds terrible. And you are right. It does, especially at first, because your brain has been trained to associate silence with something being wrong. Silence means boredom. Boredom means bad. That is the programming. But that programming is not truth. It is habit. And habits can be changed. Think of it like this. If you have been eating sugary food every single day for years, and then one day you switch to plain, unsweetened oatmeal, it is going to taste awful, bland, flavorless. You will hate it. But if you stick with it for a few weeks, something remarkable happens. Your taste buds recalibrate. The oatmeal starts to taste good. Not because the oatmeal changed, but because your palate adjusted. Your baseline reset. Your brain works the same way. If you give it a little bit of boredom every day, even just 15 or 20 minutes of unstimulated silence, it starts to recalibrate. The threshold for what feels interesting drops. Things that used to seem painfully boring start to feel manageable, then acceptable, then actually kind of engaging. The chapter that used to make you want to throw your textbook across the room now holds your attention for 30 minutes straight. The project that felt like pulling teeth now feels like a puzzle you actually want to solve. Not because the work changed, because your brain changed. And there is another layer to this that most people miss. When you sit in silence, your brain does not just tolerate the boredom. It starts mining your own thoughts. It starts pulling up things you have been too busy to think about, problems you have been avoiding, ideas you have been too distracted to develop, feelings you have been too stimulated to process. That quiet time is not empty time. It is some of the most productive time your brain will ever have, because it is working on the deep stuff, the stuff that gets buried under the daily avalanche of notifications and feeds and alerts. This is why some of the most creative people in history were also the most comfortable with solitude. They understood something that our hyper-connected world has nearly erased from common knowledge. The best thinking happens in the quiet spaces, not in the noise. A lot of people think they need more motivation to get things done, more inspiration, more energy, more tricks. But what if the thing you actually need is less? Less stimulation, less entertainment, less noise, less input. What if the key to unlocking your focus is not adding something to your life, but subtracting something from it? Because here is what I have seen over and over again. The people who struggle the most with focus are not the people with the least willpower. They are the people with the most distractions. Take away the distractions, and the willpower they thought they lacked suddenly appears. It was there the whole time. It was just being drowned out. So here's what I want you to try. Tomorrow, before you start your most important task of the day, sit down for 15 minutes with absolutely nothing. No phone, no music, no screens. Just you and the silence. Let yourself be bored. Let your brain squirm and fidget and protest. Let it throw a tantrum like a toddler who has had their toy taken away. And then watch what happens when you finally sit down to work. Watch how the resistance drops. Watch how the task that felt impossible yesterday suddenly feels approachable today. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do is not to start something new. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is to stop everything. Just for a little while, sit still, let your brain get quiet, let the glitter settle, because on the other side of that boredom, hiding behind the restlessness and the discomfort and the desperate urge to grab your phone, is the focus you have been searching for, the clarity you have been missing, the deep, sustained attention that separates people who dream about their goals from people who actually achieve them. And the most beautiful part? It was inside you the whole time. It just needed a little silence to wake up. Boredom is not your enemy. It never was. It is a door. And behind that door is everything you have been too distracted to find. Have you ever been watching a show late at night, eyes half closed, pillow already behind your head, fully ready to fall asleep, and then the episode ends on a cliffhanger? Someone opens a door and gasps. A character picks up the phone and their face goes white. The screen cuts to black and the credits roll, and suddenly you are wide awake. Your finger is already hovering over the next episode button. You were exhausted 30 seconds ago. Now you need to know what happens next. Sleep can wait. That pull you feel in that moment, that almost magnetic force dragging you toward the next episode, is not random. It is not just good storytelling. It is your brain following one of its oldest and most powerful rules. A rule so deeply wired into your psychology that you cannot override it even when you try. And here is the best part. You can use that exact same rule to destroy procrastination, boost your productivity, and make yourself actually want to come back to work. But first, let me explain what is actually happening inside your head during that cliffhanger moment. Because once you see the mechanics, you will never look at an unfinished task the same way again. Your brain has a fundamental intolerance for things that are incomplete. It does not like open loops. It does not like unanswered questions. It does not like stories without endings or puzzles with missing pieces. When something begins but does not finish, your brain files it under urgent, not because it is dangerous, but because it is unresolved. And unresolved things take up mental bandwidth. They sit in the background of your mind like a browser tab you forgot to close, quietly using energy, quietly demanding attention, quietly refusing to be ignored. This is not a flaw. This is a feature. Your brain evolved this way because in the ancient world, unfinished business could be life-threatening. If you started tracking an animal and then lost the trail, your brain needed to keep that task active. If you found a water source but got interrupted before you could drink, your brain needed to remember where it was. The ability to hold unfinished tasks in active memory was a survival advantage. The people who forgot about incomplete things did not last long. The people who could not stop thinking about them survived. Fast forward a few thousand years, and that same wiring is still running. Your brain still treats every unfinished task like an open file that needs to be closed. And that is exactly why the cliffhanger works. The show deliberately leaves something open, and your brain cannot rest until it is closed. The show's writers are not just entertaining you. They are exploiting a deep neurological pattern that you have almost no conscious control over. Now here is where it gets really interesting. What if you could do the same thing to yourself? What if, instead of being the viewer getting hooked by someone else's cliffhanger, you became the writer of your own? What if you could set up your work in a way that your brain actually pulled you back to it, the same way it pulls you back to that next episode? You can. And the technique is almost stupidly simple. Stop in the middle. Not at the end of a section, not at a clean stopping point. Not when you have wrapped everything up neatly and put a bow on it. Stop right in the middle of something, mid-thought, mid-paragraph, mid-idea. Walk away while the work is still alive, still messy, still unfinished. Leave the loop open on purpose. Let me show you why this works so well by showing you what happens when you do the opposite. Say you are working on a big report for work. You have been at it for 3 hours. You finally finish the last paragraph, save the file, close the laptop, and lean back in your chair. Done. Complete. Wrapped up. It feels great. That sense of completion is deeply satisfying. But here is the problem. Tomorrow morning, when you sit down to start the next section, you are starting from zero. Blank page, empty screen, no momentum. And that blank page feels heavy. It feels like standing at the bottom of a hill, looking up. You have to generate all your energy from scratch. You have to push through that initial resistance all over again. And that is where so many people stall out. They finished yesterday's work so completely that today's work feels like a brand new mountain to climb. Now, imagine the same scenario, but with one small difference. You have been working on that report for 3 hours. You are in the middle of a really good paragraph. The ideas are flowing. You know exactly what the next sentence should be. You can see where the argument is going. And right there, right in that sweet spot, you stop. You save the file. You close the laptop. You walk away. It feels strange at first. Every instinct is telling you to finish the thought. Just one more sentence, just one more paragraph. But you resist. You leave it open. And then something remarkable begins to happen. While you are making dinner, the report pops into your head. While you are brushing your teeth, you think of a better way to phrase that next sentence. While you're lying in bed, your brain is quietly working on the argument, refining it, improving it, connecting it to other ideas. You did not ask it to do this. You did not sit down and say, "Brain, please work on the report while I sleep." It just does it automatically because the loop is still open, and your brain cannot leave open loops alone. The next morning, when you sit down at your desk, something beautiful happens. You do not feel that heavy blank page resistance. You know exactly where you left off. You know exactly what comes next. The engine is already warm. The train is already moving. All you have to do is keep going. And within minutes, you are back in the flow, writing faster and better than you did yesterday. Not because you are more talented today, but because your brain has been working on this in the background for the past 12 hours. This is not some obscure theory. This is how some of the most prolific creators in history actually worked. Ernest Hemingway, one of the greatest writers in the English language, had a famous rule. Stop writing for a day when you still know what is going to happen next. Do not write until you are empty. Do not write until you are stuck. Stop while the well is still full, so that when you come back tomorrow, you can start by drawing from it immediately. He understood something that most people never figure out. The hardest part of any creative work is not the work itself. The hardest part is starting again. And if you set things up right, if you leave that thread hanging, if you keep that loop open, starting again becomes almost effortless, because your brain is already there, waiting for you, ready to pick up where it left off. Let me give you another way to think about this. Imagine you are putting together a massive jigsaw puzzle, one of those 1,000-piece monsters that takes over your entire dining table. You have been at it for 2 hours. The edges are done, the sky is mostly filled in, and now you are working on a tricky section in the middle. Some trees, some shadows, some pieces that all look maddeningly similar. You have been staring at one particular spot, and you just figured out where a piece goes. You pick it up, and you are about to place it, and then someone calls you for dinner. What happens in your mind during dinner? You are thinking about that puzzle. You can see the spot where that piece goes. You can picture the section you were working on. You might even be mentally sorting through the remaining pieces, figuring out what to try next. The puzzle is not in front of you anymore, but it is absolutely still in your mind, because it is unfinished, because your brain will not let it go. Now contrast that with what would have happened if you had finished the puzzle right before dinner. You would have felt that rush of completion, admired it for a moment, and then moved on. By the time your fork hit the plate, you probably would not be thinking about it at all. Finished things get filed away. Unfinished things stay active. That is the rule. And you can use this rule strategically in almost every area of your life. Studying for an exam? Do not stop at the end of a chapter. Stop in the middle of a concept, right when you are starting to understand it. When you come back, your brain will be eager to complete that understanding. It will feel less like starting over and more like continuing a conversation. Working on a creative project? Do not stop when you run out of ideas. Stop when you have too many. Walk away with 3 unwritten ideas still buzzing in your head. Tomorrow, those ideas will be the on-ramp that gets you back into the flow instantly. Building a business plan? Do not finish the entire financial section in one sitting. Stop halfway through the revenue projections, right when the numbers are starting to make sense. Your brain will keep crunching those numbers in the background, and when you sit down again, you might find that the answers come faster than you expected. The pattern is always the same. Finish completely, and restarting feels hard. Leave it open, and your brain does half the work for you while you are not even trying. Now there is a subtlety here that I do not want you to miss. This is not about leaving everything permanently unfinished. This is not about never completing anything. That would be its own kind of disaster. This is specifically about how you take breaks. It is about where you choose to pause. Most people pause at natural stopping points. The end of a section, the end of a chapter, the end of a task. And those feel satisfying in the moment, but they make the next start harder. The incomplete loop trick says, pause just before the natural stopping point. Leave one thread hanging. Keep one question unanswered. Let your brain chew on it while you rest. There is a beautiful analogy here. Think about footprints on a trail. When you walk through fresh snow and then stop, you leave footprints behind you. The next time you come to that trail, those footprints make it easier to walk. You can see where you have been. You can follow your own path. But if the snow melts completely between your visits, if all the footprints disappear, then you are breaking trail from scratch. Every step takes more effort. Every meter costs more energy. An unfinished task is like footprints in the snow. It keeps the trail warm. It keeps the path visible. It makes the return journey faster and less exhausting. A completed task, by contrast, is like a trail where the snow has melted and refrozen smooth. Clean, tidy, but hard to walk on again. There is something else happening here that is worth paying attention to. When a task stays incomplete, your brain does not just remember it. Your brain actively works on it. This is not a metaphor. This is literal. Your subconscious mind continues processing unresolved problems, even when your conscious mind is doing something else entirely. This is why solutions to hard problems often come to you in the shower, or on a walk, or at 3 in the morning when you were not thinking about work at all. Your brain was thinking about it. You just were not aware of it. By deliberately leaving a task open, you are essentially assigning your subconscious mind homework. You are saying, here is a problem I have been working on. I am going to step away now, but I would love it if you kept noodling on this. And your subconscious, because it cannot tolerate the open loop, happily obliges. It works on the problem in the background, quietly, efficiently, without any conscious effort from you. And when you come back to the task, you often find that new ideas have appeared, new solutions have formed, new connections have been made, all while you were doing something else entirely. This is why so many people make the mistake of thinking they need long, uninterrupted blocks of time to be productive. They think that unless they have 4 free hours, there is no point even starting. But the incomplete loop trick turns that belief on its head. Even 30 minutes of focused work, left deliberately unfinished, can be incredibly productive. Not just for the work you did during those 30 minutes, but for the work your brain will do over the next several hours without you even realizing it. Let me be really direct with you about something. A lot of people do not procrastinate because they are weak. They procrastinate because every time they sit down to work, they feel like they are starting from scratch. And starting from scratch is exhausting. It is the heaviest part of any task. It is the moment that requires the most willpower, the most energy, the most mental force. And if you have to go through that every single time, of course you're going to avoid it. Of course you're going to put it off. Your brain is not broken. It is just tired of pushing trains from dead stops. But if you leave a thread hanging, if you keep the loop open, then you are never starting from scratch. You are always continuing, and continuing is easier than starting. Always, every single time, no exceptions. This is one of the most elegant tricks you can use on your own mind. You are not fighting it. You are not forcing it. You are not whipping it into submission with willpower and discipline. You are just working with its natural tendencies. Your brain wants to close loops. Fine. Give it loops to close. Your brain cannot stop thinking about unfinished things. Fine. Leave things strategically unfinished. Your brain finds it easier to continue than to start. Fine. Set things up so that you are always continuing, never starting from zero. When you understand this, work stops feeling like a battle. It starts feeling like a story you are in the middle of reading, a story where you already know what page you are on, and you cannot wait to find out what happens next. Because the most powerful motivation is not external. It is not a reward waiting at the end. It is that internal pull, that itch, that curiosity, that need to complete what has already been started. And the most beautiful part of all, you do not have to manufacture that pull. You do not have to hype yourself up or watch motivational videos or wait for inspiration to strike. All you have to do is stop at the right moment, leave the door half open, walk away while the story is still unfolding, and your brain will do the rest. It will pull you back. It will whisper in your ear while you are doing other things. It will hand you ideas you did not ask for. It will make the return feel not like a chore, but like something you genuinely want to do. Because it needs to close the loop. It needs to finish the story. It needs to put the last piece in the puzzle. And that need, that deep, ancient, unshakable need, is the most reliable engine of productivity you will ever find. It does not run on motivation. It does not run on discipline. It runs on incompleteness. And incompleteness is something you can create anytime, anywhere, with any task, at absolutely no cost. All you have to do is stop one sentence before the end. Have you ever noticed something strange about deadlines? You get assigned a project on a Monday. The deadline is 2 weeks away, 14 full days. That is plenty of time. More than enough. You could start right now, work a little each day, and finish with days to spare. But you do not start right now. You start thinking about it. You make a mental note. You tell yourself you will get to it this weekend. The weekend comes and goes. The next week begins. Still nothing. A few more days drift by. And then suddenly, it is Wednesday night before the Thursday deadline, and you are sitting at your desk at 11 p.m., eyes burning, coffee going cold, typing faster than you have typed in your entire life. And somehow, you finish. Not only do you finish, but the work is actually decent, maybe even good. Now here is the question that should bother you. Where was that energy on day 1? Where was that focus on day 5? Where was that incredible laser-sharp concentration during the 11 days you spent doing absolutely nothing? It was there. It was always there, sitting inside you, fully available, completely untapped. The only thing that finally unlocked it was the feeling that time was running out. And that feeling, that urgent electric sense that the window is closing, is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. More powerful than motivation. More powerful than discipline. More powerful than any productivity app or planner or morning routine you have ever tried. Because it does not ask your brain to focus. It forces your brain to focus, automatically, involuntarily, like a reflex you cannot control. This is the principle behind what I call artificial scarcity. And once you understand it, you will have access to a switch inside your own mind that most people do not even know exists. Let me start with why your brain works this way, because the reason is fascinating. Your brain was built for a world that no longer exists. Thousands of years ago, resources were genuinely scarce. Food was limited. Water was hard to find. Safe shelter was rare. Opportunities to hunt or gather came and went with the seasons. In that world, your brain learned a critical lesson. When something is scarce, pay attention. When something is abundant, relax. This made perfect sense for survival. If there were only a few berries left on a bush, you needed to grab them now. If the bush was overflowing, you could take your time. That programming is still running inside your head today, every single day. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment, evaluating how scarce or abundant things are, and adjusting your behavior accordingly. When something feels unlimited, when there is no urgency, no constraint, no ticking clock, your brain downshifts. It conserves energy. It wanders. It procrastinates, not because it is lazy, but because it genuinely believes there is no rush. Why sprint when you have all the time in the world? But the moment something feels scarce, the moment your brain perceives that a resource is limited, that a window is closing, that an opportunity might disappear, everything changes. Your attention sharpens. Your energy spikes. Your focus narrows to a single point. Distractions that were irresistible 5 minutes ago suddenly become invisible. Your brain mobilizes everything it has because it believes this moment matters. This moment might not come again. This is why you do your best work at the last minute. It is not because you are a procrastinator. It is not because you work well under pressure. It is because your brain finally received the signal it was waiting for. Scarcity. Time is scarce now. The deadline is real now. The window is closing now. And your brain responds the way it was designed to respond, with everything it has got. The problem, of course, is that waiting for real deadlines to create this effect is a terrible strategy. You end up stressed, sleep-deprived, and producing work that is rushed instead of refined. The work might be decent, but it could have been great if you had started earlier. You know this. Everyone knows this. And yet the cycle repeats because nobody teaches you how to create that same sense of urgency without the actual emergency. That is what artificial scarcity does. You manufacture the constraint. You create the ticking clock. You build the pressure. Not enough to panic, but enough to wake your brain up and tell it that this moment counts. Here is a simple example. Say you need to write a 5-page report. You have the whole afternoon free. No meetings, no interruptions, just you and the work. If you sit down and think, I have 5 hours to do this, your brain will spread the work across every available minute. It will take breaks, it will wander, it will check things, it will move at a leisurely pace because there is no reason to hurry, and that 5-page report will somehow take the entire afternoon. But what if you change the frame? What if, instead of giving yourself the whole afternoon, you say, I am going to write this report in 90 minutes. That is my window, 90 minutes, and then I am done whether it is finished or not. Suddenly, your brain receives a completely different signal. 90 minutes. That is not a lot. Better focus, better prioritize, better cut the nonsense and get to work. And something almost magical happens. You sit down. You start writing. Your focus locks in. The distractions fall away, and an hour and a half later, the report is done. Maybe not perfect, but done. And probably better than the version that would have taken 5 hours, because your attention was concentrated instead of diluted. Think about it like a flashlight. If the beam is wide, spreading light in every direction, it looks dim. The light is there, but it is scattered. Now narrow that beam into a tight, focused point. Same flashlight, same battery, same bulb. But the light is intense, almost piercing. That is what scarcity does to your attention. It narrows the beam. It takes the same mental energy you always had and focuses it into a single, powerful point. This is why some of the most productive people you will ever meet are not the ones with the most free time. They are the ones with the least. A single mother working 2 jobs who somehow manages to finish her online degree. A startup founder with 70 things on her plate who still ships the product on time. A student juggling classes, a part-time job, and a social life who still pulls off solid grades. These people are not superhuman. They do not have secret reserves of willpower. They have constraints, and those constraints force their brains to operate at a higher level. Meanwhile, someone with an entire free weekend and nothing on the calendar often gets less done than the person who had only 2 hours available. Sounds backward, right? More time should mean more output, but that is not how the brain works. More time often means more waste, more decisions, more deliberation, more of that aimless wandering where you start something, stop, start something else, check your phone, make a snack, come back, lose your place, and end up feeling exhausted despite having accomplished almost nothing. Constraints eliminate that waste. When you know you only have 40 minutes, your brain stops asking, should I start now or later? The answer is obvious, now. There is no later. The decision is made for you. And every decision your brain does not have to make is energy saved for the actual work. This brings up something important that most people overlook. Decision fatigue is real. Every time your brain has to choose, start now or wait, do this first or that first, take a break or keep going, it uses a small amount of energy. Individually, each decision is trivial, but over the course of a day they add up. By the afternoon, your brain is tired not from working, but from deciding. And a tired brain defaults to the easiest option, which is usually doing nothing. Artificial scarcity kills decision fatigue. When you set a clear, tight window for a task, most of the decisions disappear. There is no, should I start now because the clock is already running? There is no, should I take a break because there is not enough time for one? There is no, what should I do first? Because the constraint forces you to prioritize automatically. Your brain spends less time deliberating and more time executing, and that shift alone can double your output. Let me give you a real-world scenario. Sarah is a freelance graphic designer in Portland. She loves her work, but she has a chronic problem with client projects dragging on forever. She will get a brief, start working on concepts, get distracted, come back the next day, lose her creative thread, start over, get distracted again. A project that should take a week stretches to 3. She is not lazy, she is talented, she is committed, but her time feels infinite, and infinite time is the enemy of focused work. So Sarah tries something new. She buys a simple kitchen timer, not an app, a physical timer that sits on her desk and ticks audibly. Before starting any task, she sets it. 45 minutes for initial concepts, 30 minutes for color exploration, 20 minutes for layout adjustments. And she makes herself a rule. When the timer goes off, she stops. No extensions. No just 5 more minutes. Done. The first few days feel awkward, rushed even. But by the end of the first week, something remarkable happens. She is finishing projects faster than ever, not because she is cutting corners, but because her brain is finally working at full capacity during those timed windows. The ticking clock, that steady, audible reminder that time is passing, wakes up something inside her. It activates the same urgency response that used to only show up the night before a deadline. Except now, she is in control of it. She is creating it deliberately, and she is using it every single day. There is something else happening in Sarah's brain during those timed sessions that is worth understanding. When your brain knows that time is limited, it automatically asks a very powerful question. What is the most important thing right now? Not what is interesting, not what is easy, not what feels fun. What matters most? And that question, asked under genuine time pressure, cuts through all the noise. It strips away the trivial and reveals the essential. And that clarity is worth more than any amount of extra time. Think about a farmer in the Midwest watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. He has been meaning to harvest the north field for days. But the weather was nice. There was no rush. He could do it tomorrow or the next day. Plenty of time. Then the forecast changes. Heavy rain is coming in 12 hours. Suddenly, every minute matters. He is not wasting time debating which field to harvest first. He is not second-guessing his approach. He is out there working with singular focus because the window is closing. The same work that felt optional yesterday is now urgent. And urgency is focus in its purest form. You can create that same effect without actual storm clouds. You can be your own forecast. Set the deadline. Make it real in your mind. Make it tight enough to matter, but not so tight that it crushes you. The sweet spot is a window that makes your brain think, I can do this, but I need to focus. That is where the magic lives. Not in panic, not in stress. In that alert, energized state where your brain knows it cannot afford to waste a single minute. Here is another angle on this that I think is really important. When there are no constraints, your brain treats work like an all-you-can-eat buffet. It samples a little of this, a little of that. It never fully commits to one dish because there are so many options. But when constraints are present, when the buffet is closing in 15 minutes, your brain makes decisive choices. It picks the best dishes. It skips the filler. It focuses on what it actually wants. Your tasks work the same way. Without a time limit, you tinker. You adjust fonts. You reorganize folders. You perfect things that do not need perfecting. You engage in productive feeling activities that are actually just elaborate forms of procrastination. But with a time limit, you cut straight to the core. You do the work that actually moves the needle. You skip the decorative nonsense and focus on substance. Now, I want to be clear about something because this point matters. Artificial scarcity is not about living in a constant state of panic. It is not about making yourself anxious. It is not about setting impossible deadlines that leave you feeling crushed and defeated. That is not scarcity. That is self-sabotage. And the line between the two is important. The goal is a constraint that energizes you, not one that paralyzes you. Think of it like a game. When someone says, bet you cannot finish this puzzle in 10 minutes, your first reaction is not dread. It is excitement. It is challenge. It is that competitive spark that makes you lean forward instead of pulling back. That is the feeling you are going for. Not pressure, play, not anxiety, focus. The best constraints feel like missions. Clear objective, clear time frame, clear finish line. Your brain loves missions. It loves knowing exactly what needs to happen and exactly how long it has to make it happen. When those two things are clear, something clicks inside your head. The fog lifts, the path appears, and your feet start moving. Let me leave you with something to think about. We often believe that we need more resources to do better work, more time, more space, more money, more rest. And sometimes that is true. But far more often than we realize, our best work does not come from abundance. It comes from limitation. It comes from that moment when the clock is ticking and the window is narrowing and your brain finally understands that this moment is not infinite. This moment is finite. And finite things are precious. When your brain believes that time is precious, it treats the work as precious too. It stops wasting minutes. It stops wandering. It stops negotiating with itself about whether to start now or later. It just goes. Full speed, full focus, full power. And that power was always there, every ounce of it. It was just waiting for a reason to show up. Sometimes the only reason it needs is a ticking clock and a promise you made to yourself that when the timer hits 0, the session is over. So give yourself less time, not more. Set the window, start the clock, and watch what your mind can do when it knows the moment will not last forever. Because the truth is, your brain does not need more hours. It needs more urgency. And urgency is something you can create right now, today, with nothing more than a decision and a timer. That is the power of artificial scarcity. It does not give you new abilities. It unlocks the ones you have been sitting on your entire life. We all love a beautiful picture of the future. Close your eyes and imagine your best life. The corner office with the city skyline behind you. The bank account that never makes you nervous. The relationship that feels like home. The body that moves the way you want it to. The freedom to wake up on a Tuesday morning and choose exactly how you spend your day. It feels good, does it not? Just imagining it creates a warm glow somewhere in your chest. A sense of possibility. A sense of hope. And for years, people have been told that this kind of visualization is the key to success. Picture your goals. Feel them as if they have already happened. Manifest the life you want. Put it on a vision board. Stare at it every morning. Let the universe know what you are after. And look, there is nothing wrong with positive thinking. Having a clear vision of where you want to go matters. Knowing what you are working toward matters. But here is the part that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most important thing you hear today. Sometimes, imagining the life you want actually makes you less likely to build it. That sounds crazy. How could a positive vision make you less motivated? How could dreaming about success slow you down? But the research on this is surprisingly clear, and the mechanism is almost painfully simple. When you vividly imagine achieving your goal, really feel it, really see it, really let yourself live in that fantasy, your brain does not always know the difference between imagining it and actually experiencing it. It gives you a small hit of the same satisfaction you would feel if you had actually done the work. Your heart rate drops, your energy dips, your drive softens, because somewhere deep inside your neurology, a signal fires that says, we are already there, we made it, we can relax now. Except you have not made it. You have not done anything. You just daydreamed about it for 15 minutes. But your brain already collected a small emotional paycheck, and now it has less reason to push you out the door and into the work. This is why so many people can spend years dreaming about their goals without taking a single meaningful step toward them. The dreaming itself becomes the reward. It feels productive. It feels like progress. But it is not progress. It is a sedative dressed up as ambition. And the longer you take it, the harder it becomes to actually move. Now, I am not saying you should stop imagining good things. That would be ridiculous. Hope is important. Vision is important. But there is another tool, a darker, less comfortable, far more effective tool that deserves a place right next to your vision board. And most people avoid it because it does not feel good. It is called negative visualization, and it might be the most honest conversation you ever have with yourself. Here's how it works. Instead of asking yourself, what will my life look like if everything goes right? You ask a different question. What will my life look like if I keep doing exactly what I am doing right now? Not your best self. Not your most disciplined, most motivated, most focused version. The version of you that is sitting here today, with today's habits, today's routines, today's level of effort. If that version of you continues unchanged for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, what does life look like? Sit with that for a moment. Do not rush past it. Do not intellectualize it. Actually feel it. If you keep scrolling instead of studying, where does that leave you in 5 years? If you keep saying, I will start Monday, and never actually starting, where are you in a decade? If you keep avoiding that difficult conversation, that career change, that commitment to your health, that investment in your skills, what does the future version of your life actually look like? Not the fantasy version, the honest version, the version that follows directly from the path you are currently on. That question stings. I know it does. And that sting is exactly the point. Because your brain responds to potential loss far more powerfully than it responds to potential gain. This is not an opinion. This is one of the most well-documented findings in behavioral psychology. Humans are wired to avoid pain more aggressively than they pursue pleasure. If someone offers you a chance to win $100, you will feel a certain level of motivation. But if someone tells you that you are about to lose $100, you already have, your motivation to act skyrockets. Same amount of money. Completely different emotional response. This asymmetry runs deep. It goes all the way back to the earliest days of human evolution. In the ancient world, the cost of ignoring a threat was death. The cost of missing a reward was just a missed opportunity. You could find another berry bush tomorrow, but if you ignored a sound in the bushes that turned out to be a predator, there would be no tomorrow. So your brain developed a bias, a hard-coded preference for paying more attention to dangers than to rewards. Threats get priority. Losses get priority. The possibility of something going wrong gets more mental bandwidth than the possibility of something going right. And you can use this, not to scare yourself, not to live in fear, but to light a fire under the parts of your life where comfort has quietly become a trap. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a small plant sitting on a windowsill. It is a healthy plant, green and full. All it needs is a little water each day. Just a cup, maybe 2. That is it. Nothing complicated, nothing demanding. But the owner gets busy. 1 day without water, no big deal. 2 days, still fine. A week goes by. The leaves start to curl slightly at the edges. 2 weeks. The green fades to yellow. A month. The stems droop. The soil cracks. And one morning, the owner walks by and realizes the plant is dead. Not because it was neglected all at once, but because it was neglected a little bit every single day for just long enough. Your goals are that plant. Your ambitions are that plant. Your health, your relationships, your skills, your future, they are all that plant. And the water they need is not dramatic. It is not heroic. It is just consistent, small, daily action. But when that action does not happen, when you keep telling yourself there is always tomorrow, the consequences do not announce themselves. They accumulate, silently, invisibly, until one day you look up and realize that something important has withered. Negative visualization forces you to see that withering before it happens. It pulls the future consequence into the present moment, where it can actually motivate you. Because the problem with consequences that live in the future is that they feel abstract. They feel theoretical. Your brain discounts them. It says, that is future me's problem. Present me is fine. And present me wants to watch another episode. But when you deliberately, vividly imagine what that future actually looks like, when you make it concrete, when you feel it, something shifts. The abstract becomes real. The distant becomes close. And suddenly, the couch does not feel as comfortable. The scrolling does not feel as harmless. The procrastination does not feel as innocent. Because you have seen where it leads, not in a vague, hand-wavy, someday kind of way, in a specific, detailed, gut-level kind of way. Let me give you an example. James is 32, lives in Seattle, works in tech, decent job, decent salary, decent life. But he has been meaning to learn data science for 2 years because he knows it is the direction his field is moving. He has the courses bookmarked. He has the textbooks on his shelf. He even bought a subscription to an online learning platform. But every evening after work, he is tired, and the couch is right there, and Netflix is right there, and the course can wait until next week. It has waited this long. What is one more week? Now imagine James does something uncomfortable. He sits down one Sunday morning and actually thinks about what happens if he never learns data science. Not because he is trying to torture himself, just because he is being honest. He imagines his company shifting toward data-driven decision-making. He imagines younger colleagues, people 5 years behind him, getting promoted because they have skills he does not. He imagines sitting in a meeting 2 years from now, nodding along to a conversation he does not fully understand, pretending he is keeping up, feeling that slow burn of falling behind. He imagines updating his resume and realizing that his skill set has not changed in 3 years. He imagines the interviews that do not go well, the opportunities that go to someone else, the slow, quiet narrowing of his options. That image is not fun. It is not inspiring. It does not belong on a vision board, but it has teeth. It has weight. It reaches into his chest and grabs something that the fantasy of success never quite reached. Because James is not just imagining a bad outcome. He is recognizing a trajectory. He is seeing that his current path, extended into the future, does not lead where he wants to go. And that recognition, that honest, unflinching acknowledgement, is often the thing that finally makes someone move. This is what negative visualization does. It does not replace your dreams. It adds gravity to them. It takes the goal from something you would like to achieve and turns it into something you cannot afford not to achieve. The positive vision says, look how great things could be. The negative vision says, look how much you stand to lose if you do not act. And for the way your brain is wired, that second message almost always hits harder. Now here is where I need to be careful, because this idea can be misunderstood. Negative visualization is not about catastrophizing. It is not about convincing yourself that everything is terrible and the world is falling apart. It is not about anxiety or self-punishment or spiraling into despair. That is not what this is at all. Think about it like a farmer looking at dark clouds on the horizon. A smart farmer does not panic when he sees the clouds. He does not run into the house and hide. He does not give up on the harvest. He simply acknowledges reality. Rain is coming, and he takes action. He covers the crops. He moves the equipment. He adjusts his plan. The clouds are not a curse. They are information. And the farmer who uses that information wisely ends up in a much better position than the farmer who ignores the sky and hopes for the best. That is what you are doing with negative visualization. You're looking at the sky of your own life and being honest about what you see, not to scare yourself, to prepare yourself, to wake yourself up, to give yourself the kind of clarity that comfort and complacency tend to erode. Because here's the truth that most people refuse to face. Doing nothing also has a cost. We think of inaction as neutral, as the absence of risk. But inaction is a choice, and every choice has consequences. The person who does not invest in their skills pays for it later, with fewer opportunities. The person who does not take care of their health pays for it later, with less energy, less mobility, less freedom. The person who keeps putting off the important conversation pays for it later with a relationship that slowly erodes from the inside. These costs are real. They are just delayed. And because they are delayed, we pretend they do not exist. We tell ourselves that there is always time, that we will get to it eventually, that one more day of putting it off will not make a difference. And on any given day, that is technically true. One more day probably will not change anything. But 1,000 one more days, those change everything. Negative visualization collapses that distance. It takes 1,000 tomorrows and compresses them into a single, vivid, present moment image. And in that image, you can see the accumulated cost of all those small delays. Not as a number on a spreadsheet, as a feeling in your body, as a life you do not want to live, as a version of yourself you do not want to become. And that visceral, honest, uncomfortable confrontation with the path you are currently on is often the most powerful motivation a person can experience, not because it feels good, because it feels true. And truth, even when it hurts, has a way of cutting through all the noise and nonsense and excuses that normally keep you stuck. I want to tell you something that I believe deeply. The purpose of negative visualization is not to make you afraid of the future. The purpose is to make you fall in love with the present. Because when you truly understand what is at stake, when you see clearly and honestly what your life looks like if you waste this day, this week, this year, then today stops feeling ordinary. Today starts feeling precious. This hour, this moment, this small window of opportunity that you currently have starts to shimmer with significance. And that is when action happens, not out of fear, not out of panic, out of respect for your own time, respect for your own potential, Respect for the future version of yourself who is counting on you to do something, anything, right now. Because the person who starts imperfectly today is building something. The person who waits for perfect conditions is watching something slip away. And the difference between those two people stretched over years is staggering. A single seed is small, almost invisible. You could hold it in your palm and forget it is there. But given time, that seed becomes a tree. Given time, it produces shade and fruit and roots that hold the ground together. A single act of neglect is also small, also almost invisible. But given time, it becomes a gap that becomes a distance that becomes a life you never intended to live. Negative visualization helps you see both paths, the seed and the neglect, before you have walked too far down either one. It helps you choose while there is still time to choose, and that, more than any motivational speech or inspiring quote, is what actually changes people's lives. Not the vision of the mountaintop, the honest look at the valley. Because once you have seen the valley, really seen it, really felt it, you will climb. Not because someone told you to, because you refuse to stay down there. And that refusal, born from honesty instead of hype, is the most durable form of motivation that exists. Sometimes you are lying in bed at night, fully aware that your alarm is set for 6 in the morning. You know what you need to do tomorrow. You have planned it. You have thought about it. You have even told yourself with genuine conviction that tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow you will wake up early. Tomorrow you will hit the gym. Tomorrow you will sit down and do the work you have been putting off for weeks. And in that moment, lying in the dark, you believe it. You really do. Then the alarm goes off, and within 3 seconds, a different version of you shows up. A version that was not part of last night's plan. This version is tired. This version does not care about the gym. This version has 100 reasons why 5 more minutes will not hurt. And before you even open your eyes fully, the battle is already lost. Not because you are weak, not because you do not care, but because the voice inside your head, the one narrating your thoughts, the one running the show, is tangled up in emotion. It is drowning in the feeling of the moment. And feelings, especially first thing in the morning, are terrible decision makers. This happens all day long, not just with alarms. You sit down to work, and a voice says, "You are too tired for this." You think about making an important phone call, and a voice says, "Just do it later. It is not the right time." You consider going for a run, and a voice says, "Your legs are sore. Take the day off." That voice sounds like you. It uses your language. It knows your weaknesses. And because it feels so personal, so intimate, so authentically yours, you listen to it. You obey it. You let it steer. But here's something that might change the way you talk to yourself for the rest of your life. That voice is not your commander. It is your narrator. And narrators can be wrong. Narrators can be biased. Narrators can be scared, lazy, short-sighted, and wildly unreliable. You do not have to follow every narration as if it were an order. You can override it. And one of the simplest, strangest, most surprisingly effective ways to do that is to stop saying I and start using your own name. This is the third-person command, and it works like this. Instead of saying, "I really do not want to do this," you say your name. You say, "Jake, get up." Instead of "I cannot handle this right now," you say, "Sarah, you have handled worse." Instead of "I should probably start tomorrow," you say, "Marcus, open the laptop." Right now, it sounds absurd. Talking to yourself in the third person, that is what weird people do. That is what movie villains do. That is what lonely people muttering on park benches do. Except it is also what elite athletes do, what CEOs do, what surgeons do before walking into an 8-hour operation, what trial lawyers do before standing up in front of a jury, what astronauts do, what anyone does when the stakes are high and the emotions are loud and they need to cut through the noise and take action anyway. And the reason it works is not mystical. It is mechanical. It is about distance. When you say I, you are inside the experience. You are feeling everything in first person. The fear is your fear. The doubt is your doubt. The exhaustion is your exhaustion. You are so close to the emotion that you cannot see around it. It fills your entire field of vision, and when an emotion fills your entire field of vision, it feels like the truth. It feels like the whole truth. I am tired becomes an unquestionable fact. I cannot do this becomes a permanent diagnosis. I am not good enough becomes an identity. But the moment you use your own name, something shifts. It is subtle, but it is real. You step back just a little, just enough. Suddenly, you are not drowning in the feeling. You are observing it. You are looking at yourself the way a coach looks at a player, the way a good friend looks at someone they care about, the way a wise mentor looks at a struggling student. And from that slight distance, the emotion does not disappear, but it shrinks. It loses its authority. It goes from being the voice in charge to being just one voice among many. Think about it this way. Your best friend calls you at midnight. She is panicking. She has a big presentation tomorrow, and she is convinced she is going to bomb it. She is spiraling, listing all the reasons it is going to go wrong, talking about quitting, talking about how she is not smart enough, not experienced enough, not ready. What do you say to her? Do you agree? Do you say, yeah, you are right, you are probably going to fail? Of course not. You say, listen, you have prepared for this. You know the material. You are going to walk in there and do your thing. Stop overthinking it. You are ready. You say it calmly. You say it with perspective. You say it from a place of distance because you are not inside her panic. You can see the situation clearly because you are standing outside of it. Now, here is the question that should change everything. When you are the one panicking, do you talk to yourself with that same clarity, that same compassion, that same calm, grounded perspective? Almost never. When it is your own panic, you do not coach yourself. You spiral with yourself. You agree with every catastrophic thought because it feels so real when it is happening to you. But it only feels that overwhelming because you are too close. You are inside the storm instead of watching it from the window. The third-person command puts you at the window. It does not make the storm disappear, but it gives you enough distance to see it for what it is. Weather. Temporary weather. Not a permanent condition, not a life sentence, just a passing emotional state that feels enormous in the moment, but will fade, like every emotion always does, if you give it enough time and refuse to let it drive. This is not theory. Think about how many times in your life you were absolutely certain you could not do something, and then you did it. Think about how many times the fear was screaming at you to stop, and you kept going anyway, and everything turned out fine. Think about how many times the voice in your head said, "This is too hard," And then, somehow, some way, you got through it. Every single one of those moments proves the same thing. The voice lies. Not always, not about everything, but often enough that you should stop treating it like gospel. The third-person command gives you a tool to catch the voice in the act. When it says, "I cannot do this," and you rephrase it as, "Jake, you can do this," something clicks. The first version is a feeling masquerading as a fact. The second version is a direction, a command, an instruction from someone who can see the bigger picture, even though that someone is still you. Let me show you how this plays out in real situations. A woman named Claire works in finance in New York. High-pressure job, long hours. Most mornings, she wakes up already dreading the day. Her inner monologue starts immediately. "I am exhausted. I hate this commute. I do not want to deal with that client today. This job is draining me." And by the time she gets to the office, she is already emotionally spent. Not from work, from her own thoughts about work. One day, Claire tries something different. When the alarm goes off, instead of sinking into the usual spiral, she says out loud, "Claire, get up. You have done this before. One thing at a time." And something shifts, not dramatically, not like a movie scene where the music swells and everything changes, more like a small click, a tiny gear turning in the right direction. She gets up a little faster. She moves through her morning with a little less resistance. She walks into the office with a little more composure, not because her circumstances changed, because her relationship with her own thoughts changed. She went from being pulled by her emotions to gently steering through them. And here is the thing that compounds over time. Every time you give yourself a third-person command and then follow through, you are building something. You are building credibility with yourself. You are teaching your brain that when you say something, it means something. That when you give yourself a direction, you follow it. And that credibility, that self-trust, is the foundation of real confidence. Most people think confidence is a feeling, something that comes before action, something you either have or you do not. But that is not how confidence actually works. Confidence is a consequence. It is the result of repeatedly doing what you said you were going to do. Every kept promise to yourself, no matter how small, adds a brick to the wall. Every broken promise takes one away. And over time, the wall is either strong enough to lean on or too weak to support anything. The third-person command helps you keep more promises, not because it gives you superpowers, but because it separates you from the part of your mind that breaks promises, the emotional, reactive, short-term thinking part, and connects you to the part that keeps them, the strategic part, the long-view part, the part that knows what you actually want, even when the rest of you is screaming for comfort. I want you to think about a farmer again. Not every day is a good day for farming. Some days the sun is brutal. Some days the wind will not stop. Some days his body aches and his mind wants nothing more than to sit under a tree and rest. But the field does not care how he feels. The seeds do not care if he is motivated. The season does not pause because he is having a bad day. So he goes out there anyway. Not because he is always enthusiastic, but because he understands that some things in life are done out of responsibility, not inspiration. Your most important work is like that field. It does not wait for your mood to be perfect. It does not wait for the motivation fairy to sprinkle magic dust on your morning. It needs attention today. It needs your hands today, whether you feel like it or not. And the third-person command is the thing that gets you out of bed and into the field on the days when every fiber of your being is whispering, "Stay." There is one more layer to this that I do not want you to miss. When a strong emotion arrives, fear, shame, frustration, self-doubt, it tries to become your identity. It does not say, "You are experiencing some fear right now." It says, "You are afraid." It does not say, "You are having a moment of doubt." It says, "You are not good enough." It merges with your sense of self. It fuses with your identity so tightly that you cannot tell where you end and the emotion begins. The third-person command breaks that fusion. When you say, "Jake is feeling afraid right now," instead of "I am afraid," you are doing something profound. You are acknowledging the emotion without becoming it. You are saying, "Yes, fear is here. But fear is not me. I am the one watching fear. I am the one who gets to decide what to do next, regardless of what fear is suggesting." That distinction, "I am afraid" versus "fear is present," is the difference between being a passenger and being a driver. And you always, always want to be the driver. Strong people are not people who never feel fear. That is a myth. Strong people feel fear all the time. The difference is that they do not let fear sit behind the wheel. They acknowledge it. They nod at it. They say, "I see you," and then they put their hands on the steering wheel and drive anyway. The third-person command is how they do it. It is not the only way, but it is one of the most accessible, most immediate, most practical ways to take back control of your own mind in the moments when control feels impossible. So here is where we land after everything we have talked about. After the intentionally bad rule and the boredom therapy and the incomplete loop trick and the artificial scarcity and the negative visualization and the third-person command. Here is the thread that connects all of them. Your mind is not your enemy. It never was. It is a tool, an extraordinarily powerful, deeply complex, wildly creative tool. But like any tool, it works best when you understand how it operates, when you know its quirks, its biases, its tendencies, its shortcuts, when you stop fighting against its nature and start working with it. Every technique in this entire conversation is based on the same core principle. Work with your brain, not against it. Your brain fears perfection? Give it permission to be bad. Your brain craves stimulation? Remove the stimulation and let it recalibrate. Your brain hates starting from zero? Leave loops open so it never has to. Your brain responds to scarcity. Create scarcity on purpose. Your brain pays more attention to loss than gain? Show it what it stands to lose. Your brain drowns in first-person emotion? Step into the third person and get some air. None of these tricks require talent. None of them require money. None of them require special equipment or rare knowledge or years of training. They require one thing: the willingness to understand yourself honestly and to use that understanding strategically. And here is the final truth I want to leave with you. The people who achieve extraordinary things are not fundamentally different from you. They are not smarter. They are not braver. They are not genetically gifted with discipline that you were somehow denied. They are simply people who learned how their own mind works and made small, consistent adjustments based on that knowledge, day after day, week after week, until the adjustments became habits, and the habits became results, And the results became a life that most people assume required some kind of magic. It was never magic. It was always mechanics. And now you know the mechanics. So the only question left is the one you have to answer for yourself. And nobody else can answer it for you. What are you going to do with what you now know? Are you going to nod, think that was interesting, and go back to scrolling? Or are you going to pick one technique, just one, and try it today? Not tomorrow, not next Monday, today. Because every single thing we talked about points to the same truth. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is not a giant leap. It is a small step taken imperfectly, taken now, taken despite every voice in your head telling you to wait for a better moment. There is no better moment. There is only this one, and this one is more than enough. Your mind can do the impossible, not because it is magical, but because it is yours, and you just learned how to use it. Now go.